Welcome, good morning to this wonderful fellowship, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Hendersonville. I'm Jan Parton, your worship associate. A really special welcome to any first-time guests or visitors. We hope you will join us downstairs after the service for coffee or tea or just conversation, any or all of the above. And we have a special person Paul Shoemaker would like to introduce. There's Paul. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
I'd like to introduce Neal and Jordan. They're visiting with us from Philadelphia. They work in a community garden at their high school, and they're here to intern on the farm.
And Paul's had some wonderful ones over the years, hasn't he? Speaking of Paul, I'm going to make this announcement right now. Paul and Simone have generously offered their farm for the youth today. However, based upon the weather, they have decided to cancel. So there will be no gathering, family ministry gathering of people at Paul's farm today anyway. Right, Paul? Right. Okay. Okay, thank you. We do have another special guest who would like to come up and just talk to you for a minute. Special guest, would you like to come, please?
Yes, what time is it? Time for the auction. You got it. And I'm sure you have it on your calendar already for October 28th. That's a Friday evening. Trust me, you don't want to miss this event. It's a lot of fun, and we need this to make our budget. So we'll need you here. We need things to sell, items, dinners, services. You name it. We'll have some forms that'll be coming out toward the middle of September to start collecting your ideas. But the main thing, get it on your calendar, and if you're willing to help, there's a lot of work that needs to come into it, so see me. Thank you.
Thank you, special guest. That's how he wanted to be introduced. Just one other little announcement. I wanted to remind all of you that we will be singing a very short song, A Spirit of Life, later on in the service, and we do ask that you wear your mask while we sing. So, otherwise, it's up to you. If you want to wear it, you can. If you don't want to wear it, you don't have to. So for our chalice lighting this morning, these are from the words of Catherine Callahan. As the chalice is lit, let us come together in the sacred space we have created. Let the cares of the day fall away and know that here is a place for quiet reflection, for a pause in our lives, for breathing into our true selves. Let what is said and felt here add richness to the dimensions of our lives and spiritual practices. We are strong together in community. We share the experience of being human. Let the warmth of the chalice, lit during our time together, connect us and carry us into the world. I'd like to introduce our speaker for this morning. I am pleased to introduce the Reverend Neal Jones, who is a psychologist at the Pisgah Institute in Asheville. He has served as a pastor of 5 congregations, as well as a clinical psychologist at Baptist Hospital in Columbia. A native of North Carolina, he earned his BA in political science from Wake Forest University, his Master of Divinity from Southeastern Theological Seminary, and his Doctor of Psychology from Baylor University. He has served as a minister of a United Church of Christ and a Moravian church in North Carolina, and 3 UU congregations, the UU Fellowship of Waco, Texas, the UU Congregation of Columbia, South Carolina for 11 years, and most recently, Mainline Unitarian Church in Philadelphia. He also serves as the chair of the National Board of Trustees of Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Neal preaches and lives a practical spirituality that seeks personal wholeness, relational respect, and social justice. He states that more and more Americans are describing themselves as spiritual, but not religious. But what does that mean? I can't wait to hear what he says. And now we have our special chorale group. We've got a lot of specials this morning.
Thank you, choir. I know it's hard enough speaking through a mass, but you guys actually sang through a mass, which made it even more impressive, so thank you. And thank you, UUs of Hendersonville, for having me back. It's been a full year since I was with you last time, and you made me feel so welcome then, and you're making me feel welcome again. Thank you for having me back. This morning I want to share my definition of spirituality. Before doing so, I would like to say to any visitors who are here who are not Unitarian Universalists that when UU ministers speak from the pulpit, we are not speaking on behalf of Unitarian Universalism or the denomination or even the congregation. Every member of a UU congregation can think and speak for themselves. As a minister, just like every member here, I'm sharing with you my understanding and my perspective based on my experiences. In a Unitarian congregation, we learn from each other. And this minister is much a student as a teacher. And so my understanding of spirituality is like my understanding of anything else. Is not definitive, because I'm speaking for myself, though my perspective may very well represent one of a great variety of perspectives that you'll find in a Unitarian congregation, which in my mind is the brilliance of Unitarian Universalism. And neither is my understanding final, for I suspect that my understanding may very well change as hopefully I continue to learn and grow. As Jan said, it has become popular these days for people to claim that they are spiritual but not religious. What does that mean? Well, at one time, being spiritual and being religious were basically synonymous. But spiritual and religious are getting divorced these days as more and more Americans identify themselves as the religiously non-affiliated, the famous nuns, who now represent a quarter of all Americans, and a third of those younger than 30. They are the fastest growing religious group in America, if you can call them religious. Now, I understand spirituality as our capacity to connect with that which is greater than ourselves. Now, the more traditionally religious among us might use the word God to describe that something greater, whereas we humanist types prefer words such as humanity, life, the world, or the universe. Spirituality is the largest perspective by which we understand ourselves, others, our world, and life. And this transcendent connection gives us a sense of meaning and purpose, as well as a context for developing our values and our ethics. Now, some people's sense of the transcendent is as large as all of humanity, all living things, the planet, the universe, life itself, while some people's sense of the transcendence doesn't extend very far from themselves, perhaps no further than their family or their ethnic group or their religion or their nation. In my understanding, spirituality is innate and universal. Everyone is born with the capacity for self-transcendence, a capacity that is refracted through one's religion, culture, gender, ethnicity, family dynamics, personality, and life experiences, which explains the great variety of spiritual experiences and expressions that we see across humanity. Now, spirituality is a slippery term because it is extremely subjective and personal. In fact, our spirituality may be the most personal thing about us. When we refer to one's spirit or soul, we're referring to the essence of who that person is, the core of their being. Spirit means breath. You know, the Bible portrays God as bringing Adam to life by breathing into him. Like our breathing, our spirituality animates our lives by centering, organizing, and defining who we are. Now, religion is a group's organized expression of spirituality, with the trappings of history and tradition, beliefs and doctrines, rituals and ceremonies, sacred writings and ecclesiastical authorities. But spirituality is deeper and broader than any particular religious tradition. Just as a bucket of seawater can give us a taste of the ocean, but cannot contain the ocean, no religion can express all of spirituality. And any religion which does claim to be the only way to truth is being presumptuous and arrogant, in my opinion. And that's why I appreciate Unitarian Universalism's embrace of all religious, philosophical, and spiritual paths, as audacious as that attempt may be. Now, I realize that some of us humanist types may be squeamish about that word spiritual, but I don't think we should be afraid of that word, because it's not about divinity, but humanity. Your humanity and mine. It's about fulfilling our capacity to be human. The traditional use of the word salvation implies that something needs to be imparted from beyond us to our human nature. But I'm interested in the original meaning of words, and that word salvation shares the same root as the word salve, an anointment for health and wholeness. Our salvation doesn't require any additives. Everything necessary for our growth and development into whole human beings is planted within us. The seeds of our humanity are like seeds in the ground. The potential only needs the right conditions for growth to occur. So, what are some of these capacities with which we are born and which, if developed, would enable us to get beyond ourselves? I'd like to suggest just a few, 8 to be exact. It's by no means an exhaustive list, but I believe it to be an essential list of what it means to be spiritual, which is to say, what does it mean to be fully human? So number 1, the capacity for reverence. For reverence. Now, typically, reverence is associated with belief in God, but it need not be. The capacity for reverence is the sense of mystery and awe one feels about the universe and life and one's own life. Many of us have felt this sense while standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon or in the delivery room when our child was born, or staring up at a canopy of glittering stars on a dark night, or into the eyes of someone who loves you with all their heart. A sense of reverence is an awareness that life is grand and wonderful, far beyond our comprehension and imagination. It's knowing that though I am small, limited, and finite, I am part of something much bigger than I. Now, we UUs can be dismissive of emotion, but the capacity for reverence is primarily the ability to feel deeply. Number 2, the capacity for gratitude. For gratitude. Now, gratitude is the awareness that this awe-inspiring universe and people, past and present, provide us with what we need to live and flourish. Life has given us gifts that we have neither earned nor deserved. Indeed, life itself is a gift. Our parents have conceived us. Friends and family have supported us. Teachers and books have taught us. Art and music have inspired us. Plants and animals have given their lives for our nourishment. The air around us fills our lungs. The sun warms our planet. Gratitude is the capacity to recognize that none of us would be here if not for the contributions of someone or something else. It's a recognition that we are ultimately dependent. I know that word is heretical in our society. We are ultimately dependent. It's a truth that runs counter to the American myth of the self-made person who pulls themselves up by their own bootstraps, the rugged individualist who has gotten where they are by their own brains and brawn, the self-reliant person who doesn't need anybody. Traditional religion uses the word grace, which shares the same Latin root as gratitude, to talk about God's unmerited favor. Again, we need not believe in God in order to feel grateful for life's giftedness. Number 3, the capacity for stewardship. Now, I don't need to tell you that in church, stewardship has become synonymous with the pledge drive. But it's a word with much richer connotations. An awareness that the universe as a whole and this planet in particular sustain us leads to a feeling of obligation to protect the earth's resources and preserve its beauty. It also leads to a feeling of obligation to be responsible stewards of our own resources, one's property and possessions, time and talent, body and mind. An obligation to share these gifts for the betterment of others and society as a whole, not merely for our own self-enhancement. The capacity for stewardship is the ability to see ourselves as custodians, which I know, it runs counter to capitalism's pressure to cast us as mere consumers who regard the earth as providing us with a limitless supply of goodies to devour, exploit, buy, and accumulate. Now, such a truncated view of our planet and ourselves will lead to the earth's destruction and inevitably lead to our own destruction. For as Chief Seattle wisely put it, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. Number 4, the capacity for self-worth. Now, most of the universe is inanimate matter, but you and I have been gifted with the privilege of being alive. And whatever the duration and condition of that privilege, it is a privilege nonetheless to be alive. And that's what makes our lives meaningful and valuable. An awareness of this privilege leads to recognition of our dignity and worth as human beings. The capacity for self-worth is the ability to realize that even though we may have shortcomings, and we do make mistakes, and we do have a lot of growing up to do, we are fundamentally good because life is good, and we are alive. To use a biblical image, it's the capacity to hold two truths simultaneously. We are dust, and we are the image of God. This awareness our basic goodness runs counter to the old doctrine of original sin, which holds that human beings are fundamentally defective and need a Savior. Our Unitarian ancestors rightfully rejected this debilitating belief. Number 5, the capacity for love. The ability to recognize our own dignity and worth is inseparably tied to our ability to recognize the dignity and worth of others, for we share our humanity. Now, it may sound trite, but it's true. We can love others only insofar as we can love ourselves, and we can love ourselves only insofar as we're able to love others. People who cannot abide others who are greedy, for example, expose their inability to accept their own tendencies toward greed. Likewise, someone who is driven by perfectionism can be expected to be as judgmental of the imperfections of others as they are of their own imperfections. Love of others and love of self are basically one and the same capacity. And a well-developed capacity for love extends to others and oneself what dignity and worth deserve: honesty, trustworthiness, kindness, patience, respect, generosity, and forgiveness. Number 6, the capacity for justice. I believe that a well-developed capacity for love leads inevitably to a desire for justice. Or in the words of Dr. Cornel West, justice is what love looks like in public. If you truly love others, you realize that it's not enough to give them chocolates and roses. You must give them a social system which treats them with the dignity and equality that all persons deserve. You must give them a political system which provides them a seat at the table of self-government, regardless of their socioeconomic status. You must give them an economic system which, in the words of Dr. King, doesn't take necessities from the masses in order to give luxuries to the classes. We are not individuals who live in isolation from each other. For better or worse, whether we like each other or not, we live in community. Again, in the words of Dr. King, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. A well-developed capacity for justice takes responsibility for the human environment which forms or deforms the human beings within it. I'm always surprised and disappointed when Unitarians, of all people, ask me, what does social action have to do with spirituality? As if the two were mutually exclusive. The pursuit of justice is not the absence of spirituality, it is its fulfillment. Number 7, the capacity for creating meaning. Now, as far as we know, squirrels do not pause in the midst of gathering nuts and ask, what's the meaning and purpose of my life? The question of meaning and purpose is a distinctly human question, and it's a challenge for all of us. Now, some religious people may think that they're off the hook in answering this question because, in their way of thinking, God has a master plan for the entire universe. Even if that were true, believers must still discern the will of God for their lives. And whether or not you believe that the universe has meaning, you must still figure out the meaning and purpose of your life. Ironically, This capacity to define meaning is not developed by asking, what's the meaning of life? For it's not a question to be asked, but to be lived. The meaning of life is discovered in and through the experience of living. Now, for many people, life is made meaningful by their close relationships, particularly their families and friends. Many of us would agree with Henry Nouwen. There's no reason to live if there's nobody to live for. Many live for their work. The biblical book of Genesis describes work as a curse. But for those of us who take pride in our work, who gain a sense of competency and mastery through our jobs, who feel that we're making a contribution to the lives of others, work feels more like a vocation than an occupation. Many define their life's meaning through service to the larger community, through making this world a better place than they found it. Unitarians are notorious for that. Many find meaning in the savoring of the gifts of life, in relishing the small pleasures that are easy to overlook. The aroma of a fresh cup of coffee, the crispness and coolness of clean sheets on the bed, the delight of a child's laughter, the orange glow of a setting sun. The more we immerse ourselves in life, the less the question of meaning matters, because the living of our lives answers the question for us. And number 8, the capacity for living with mortality. We humans are also the only animals who are haunted by an awareness of our mortality. Like the question of meaning, the issue of mortality is extremely personal. It's not simply that I know that all living creatures will die. It's knowing that I will die. A hard truth that many of us would rather not think about. I'm always amused by the certainty of some ministers that there is life after death. Some can describe the conditions of heaven and hell as vividly as the furniture in their living room. Wouldn't it be more honest to admit what we know and what we don't know? And wouldn't it demonstrate more integrity to make only promises we know we can keep? Now, what we do know with certainty is that there is life before death, and that this one life of which we know is made all the more meaningful because of our awareness that it will end. Or as the therapist Irvin Yalom put it, although the physicality of death destroys us, the idea of death saves us. Without a deadline, no pun intended, we postpone what we need to do. A deadline gives us a sense of urgency, and death, the ultimate deadline, gives our lives a sense of preciousness. I'm reminded each time a friend or acquaintance dies that we dare not fritter away this present moment, because it may very well be the only moment we have. We should savor the sweetness of the simple pleasures, precisely because they do not last. We should be more fully present with others, because they will not always be around. We should be more fully present with ourselves, be more authentic and less pretentious. We should put first things first and last things last. We should worry less and live more. a well-developed capacity for living in the shadow of death enables us to live as if our lives were not mere dress rehearsals. As far as we know, this is the one and only performance. So in my way of thinking, these are just some of the capacities that represent our spirituality. Now, clearly, all persons are at different points in the process of developing these capacities. Some come to see life as a gift, whereas others experience life as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, to quote Hobbes. Those whose basic needs have been satisfied in life are more likely to feel gratitude than those who have been deprived. Those who have been shamed or abused may not come to recognize their own dignity and worth, or that of others. To be born with a capacity does not guarantee that the conditions of life will favor its development. Genetics, family of origin, geography, socioeconomic status can deal us a promising or problematic hand, to say nothing of the cards we deal ourselves through our own choices in life. Another trite but true statement is that life can be unfair and unkind. But the ethical challenge for you and me is to make this life fairer and kinder so that all persons can have the opportunity to realize their full capacities as human beings, to be spiritual, whether they're religious or not. Amen.
Neal, thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to our stones of community. At this time, we pause to reflect on our week. We recall the milestones, the joys, the concerns, the sorrows, by placing a stone in the water. Community is deepened by sharing with each other what is in our hearts. And I do have a few joys and sorrows. The first one is probably more of an announcement, but it's a joy. Fabulous food with friends. We are ready for you to sign up for a September-October pairings. Watch for an email this week. Ann Talley will be in the foyer after the service to answer all of your questions and sign you up. Where's Ann? Ann, are you here? Oh, there's Ann. Okay. We do have I guess it's a concern from Helen B. Let us drop a stone of healing in a chaotic world. And we do have two more. These were dated August 4th and July 31st, and apparently they were not readily available at the time. These were online. They are now available. So the August 4th was from Charlotte C. Kudos to the voters of Kansas who this week said, well, I don't know if I could, H-E-L-L, no. Can I say that?
If you were
Hell.
in Baptist church, you could say hell.
Hell no. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend. Unlike many legislators, they know that women have a right to bodily autonomy, not forced birth or near death for pregnancy or other tragic complications. So that was from Charlotte. And then on July 31st, this is a message from Sarah S. So happy to get to attend and be part of a group that bring my parents, Peg and Ed, such joy and happiness. Love you both, Mom and Dad. So I'm glad we got to read that one. At least. And now for the offering. In the words of Erica Hewitt, the offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May we offer help. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. And I would like to read our mission statement, if I may. UUFH is an inclusive community of faith for all ages. Let me start over. UUFH is an inclusive community of faith for all ages and gathers in covenant to celebrate life in all its joy and mystery, inspire journeys of truth and meaning, engage in practice and service for love, justice, and peace. And now we get to sing. We're going to be singing Spirit of Life, and remember, and I have to go get my mask, number 123. So, Paulette? We extinguish the flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in.
And our benediction are the words of Frederick Buechner. Listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery that it is, in the boredom and pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it. Because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. Amen.
We're going to do Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, wearing a mask, and would like to sing the chorus. Hallelujah, please join us.
Thank you, Paulette, and thank you, choir. Go in peace.